In a quiet courtroom, an 8-year-old black boy stood up to defend his mother with words so sharp and heartfelt that even the judge was left speechless, captivated by his unexpected brilliance. It was a humid morning in Birmingham, Alabama, when the case of State versus Monique Harris began in a small county courtroom. Monique Harris, a 32-year-old single mother, faced charges of theft after allegedly stealing $200 worth of groceries from a local supermarket. The prosecution claimed she had intentionally shoplifted to feed her family, while Monique maintained it was a misunderstanding. She had forgotten to scan a few items during a chaotic self-checkout. Her son, Jaden Harris, sat in the courtroom, his small frame barely visible over the wooden bench, clutching a notebook he'd brought from home. Monique was a nursing assistant who worked long hours at a local hospital. She and Jaden lived in a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood, scraping by on her income and occasional help from her sister. Jaden, a third grader at Carver Elementary, was known at school for his quick mind and love of reading. He spent hours at the library, devouring books on history, science, and even law, inspired by a documentary about Thurgood Marshall he'd watched with his mother. At home, he often asked Monique about her work, her struggles, and the world around them, absorbing her answers with a curiosity that belied his age. The trouble started 3 months earlier at Savamart, a busy supermarket near their apartment. Monique, exhausted after a double shift, had taken Jaden shopping for groceries. With a cart full of essentials, milk, bread, eggs, and some canned goods, she used the self-checkout to save time. In the rush, she missed scanning a few items, including a pack of chicken and a bag of apples. The store's loss prevention officer stopped her at the exit, accusing her of theft. Monique explained it was an honest mistake and offered to pay, but the officer called the police, and she was arrested in front of Jaden, who watched, wide-eyed, as his mother was handcuffed. The case drew attention because of Monique's clean record and the circumstances, a single mother struggling to provide for her son. A local news outlet picked up the story, and posts on X highlighted the incident, with some calling it an overreach by the store and others questioning Monique's intentions. The courtroom, though small, was packed with reporters, community members, and a few advocates from a local legal aid group who had taken an interest in Monique's case. Monique's public defender, Ms. Carla Evans, was a seasoned attorney but overworked, juggling dozens of cases. She had prepared a defense centered on Monique's character, her lack of criminal history, and the chaotic nature of the self-checkout system, which often led to errors. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Robert Klein, argued that Monique had knowingly walked out with unpaid items, citing store surveillance footage showing her leaving without stopping to correct the mistake. Jaden had been at every hearing, sitting quietly with his notebook, scribbling notes and questions. Monique had tried to shield him from the details, but Jaden insisted on coming, saying he wanted to support her. He'd overheard enough conversations between Monique and her sister, between Ms. Evans and her paralegal, to understand that his mother faced up to 6 months in jail and a fine that could cripple their finances. Jaden spent evenings reading about shoplifting laws, using his school library's computer to search for legal terms and precedents. He didn't fully grasp the complexities, but he understood enough to know his mother was in trouble. On the day of the trial, Monique sat at the defense table, her hands clasped tightly. Jaden was in the front row, his notebook open, a pencil gripped in his small hand. The judge, Honorable Patricia Coleman, a veteran jurist known for her fairness but no-nonsense demeanor, presided over the case. She had seen countless petty theft cases, but this one felt different, perhaps because of the media attention, perhaps because of the small boy watching intently. The prosecution began with the store manager, who testified that Monique had deliberately skipped scanning items and walked out. The surveillance footage was played, showing Monique scanning most of her groceries, but missing a few items in the rush. Mr. Klein emphasized her failure to double-check, suggesting intent. Ms. Evans countered with Monique's testimony, where she explained her exhaustion after a 16-hour shift and the confusion of the self-checkout machine, which had glitched during her transaction. She admitted her mistake, but insisted she had no intention of stealing. As the trial progressed, Jaden's attention never wavered. He wrote down words like intent and evidence, circling them in his notebook. During a recess, he tugged at Ms. Evans's sleeve and asked, "Why don't they believe Mom didn't mean to do it?" Ms. Evans, surprised by his earnestness, explained that the law required proof of intent, but the prosecution was using the footage to argue otherwise. Jaden nodded, his brow furrowed, and returned to his seat, flipping through his notes. The turning point came late in the trial. Ms. Evans had called a character witness, Monique's supervisor at the hospital, who vouched for her honesty and work ethic. But the prosecution's cross-examination was relentless, painting Monique as someone who might bend rules under pressure. Jaden, watching his mother's face tighten with worry, felt a surge of frustration. He raised his hand, as if in a classroom, catching Judge Coleman's eye. "Excuse me, young man," Judge Coleman said, her tone curious but firm. "Do you have something to say?" Jaden stood, his voice small but clear. "Yes, ma'am. I want to talk for my mom." The courtroom stirred, reporters leaning forward, pencils poised. Monique shook her head slightly, whispering, "Jaden, no." But Ms. Evans, sensing something remarkable, asked the judge to allow it. Judge Coleman, after a moment's hesitation, nodded. "Let's hear what he has to say," she said. "But keep it brief, young man." Jaden stepped to the front, his notebook clutched to his chest. He looked at his mother, then at the judge, and began. "My name is Jaden Harris, and I'm 8 years old. My mom didn't steal anything. She works so hard at the hospital, sometimes all night, and she was really tired that day. She always tells me to be honest, even when it's hard. She wouldn't steal because she knows it's wrong, and she teaches me to do what's right." The courtroom was silent, every eye on Jaden. He opened his notebook, his hands steady despite the weight of the moment. "I looked up what intent means," he continued. "It means you want to do something bad on purpose. My mom didn't want to take anything. The machine was acting funny, it kept beeping, and she was trying to hurry because I was hungry. I saw it all. She even said she'd pay when the man stopped her, but he didn't listen." Jaden's voice grew stronger as he spoke. "I also read about other people who got in trouble for accidents at stores. There was a case in Atlanta where a lady forgot to scan something, and they let her go because she didn't mean to steal. My mom's like that. She's not a thief. She's the best mom. She reads, system. Helps me pay for things like food and clothes, even when we don't have a lot of money." The room was utterly still. Judge Coleman leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Jaden flipped a page in his notebook. "I wrote down some things I learned. The law says you have to prove someone meant to do something wrong. The video they showed, it doesn't show my mom hiding anything. She was trying to scan everything, but the machine messed up. That's not the same as stealing. And the store man didn't even give her a chance to fix it. That's not fair." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously. Monique's eyes glistened, but she kept her composure, her hands gripping the table. Jaden continued, undeterred. "My mom always pays for everything, even when it's hard. She's not perfect, but she's not a thief. I know the judge has to decide, but I hope you see the truth. My mom doesn't belong in jail. She belongs at home with me." Jaden closed his notebook and looked at Judge Coleman. "That's all I wanted to say, ma'am." He walked back to his seat, his small frame radiating a quiet strength. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and Judge Coleman banged her gavel for silence. She looked at Jaden, then at Monique, and called for a brief recess to deliberate. During the recess, the courtroom buzzed with conversation. Reporters posted updates on X, with comments like, "This kid's a genius," and "Jaden Harris just stole the show." Community members in the audience whispered about the unfairness of Monique's situation, while others debated whether Jaden's words would sway the judge. Monique hugged Jaden tightly, whispering, "You didn't have to do that," but her voice was thick with pride. In the judge's chambers, Judge Coleman reviewed the case file, the footage, and her notes. Jaden's words echoed in her mind, not just his logic, but his unwavering belief in his mother. She'd seen many defendants, many children in the courtroom, but never a child so young speak with such clarity and conviction. She considered the evidence. The footage was inconclusive on intent, Monique's record was spotless, and the store's quick escalation raised questions about fairness. When court resumed, Judge Coleman delivered her ruling. After careful consideration of the evidence and testimony, she said, her voice steady, I find that the prosecution has not sufficiently proven intent to commit theft beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant, Monique Harris, is found not guilty. The courtroom erupted in applause. Monique buried her face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jaden ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Ms. Evans smiled, shaking her head in disbelief at Jaden's impact. The prosecution team looked stunned, packing up their files in silence. Judge Coleman addressed the room, her tone softer than usual. I want to commend the young man who spoke today. Your words were thoughtful and compelling, and they reminded us all of the importance of truth and fairness. The news spread quickly. By evening, local TV stations were covering the story, calling Jaden the 8-year-old lawyer. Posts on X went viral, with thousands sharing clips of his speech, which someone had recorded despite courtroom rules. Legal experts weighed in, praising Jaden's grasp of intent and evidence, while others called for reforms in how stores handle suspected shoplifting. Monique and Jaden avoided the cameras, slipping out a side exit with Ms. Evans's help. Monique returned to work the next day, her head held high despite the whispers of coworkers who'd seen the news. Jaden went back to school, where his classmates bombarded him with questions. He shrugged them off, saying, I just told the truth. His teacher, Mrs. Larson, pulled him aside to say how proud she was, and the school principal invited him to speak at an assembly about standing up for what's right. The community rallied around Monique. A local nonprofit offered to cover her legal fees, and a GoFundMe page raised thousands to help with groceries and rent. Monique was hesitant to accept the money, but her sister convinced her, saying, Let people help you for once. Jaden, meanwhile, started a small law club at school, teaching his friends about basic legal concepts he'd learned from his research. He dreamed of becoming a lawyer one day, inspired by the courtroom experience. The supermarket issued a statement apologizing for the incident, promising to review their loss prevention policies. Some called it damage control, but it sparked a broader conversation on X about racial profiling and overzealous store security. Monique considered a civil lawsuit against Savamart but decided against it, wanting to move forward. She and Jaden focused on rebuilding their lives, grateful for the support but eager for normalcy. Jaden's speech became a local legend, replayed on news segments and shared in parenting forums. Teachers used it in civics classes to discuss justice and advocacy. Monique framed Jaden's notebook, hanging it on their living room wall as a reminder of his courage. Jaden, ever humble, said, It's just words, Mom. You're the one who's always there. The courtroom moment lingered in Birmingham's collective memory, a testament to a boy's love for his mother and his ability to speak truth to power. It wasn't just about a not guilty verdict. It was about a child reminding everyone that justice requires listening, even to the smallest voice in the room.